Give us your name and please tell us the group that you're representing.
Hi, my name is Daryl Jackson, and I'm representing the people that live along Jackson Drain Lane.
Okay.
So I can answer
Sure.
a lot of the questions that you were having.
Great, good.
Well, I'll start off with part of my letter, and then I have a few more things that I can add that
Sure.
I've heard from today.
Now is your time.
Okay. As a resident with a family located on Jackson Drain Lane, I'm very concerned with the development plans proposed by Stillwater Builders. As I understand, Stillwater plans to place an emergency entrance on Jackson Drain Lane. I have several serious issues with this proposed entrance. First, Jackson Drain Lane is a dirt and gravel driveway to several houses and families. It is not suitable for an emergency entrance for a development. The width of Jackson Drain Lane alone is too narrow to accommodate two-way traffic and would heavily impede on our ability to leave or enter our residence. In addition, much of the property Jackson Drain Lane leads to is agricultural, so it hinders our ability to have agricultural equipment and vehicles accessing our properties. There is a 50-foot easement for the driveway, though its intent was only for a few families and not hundreds of houses to have access. Even if the current driveway is expanded to its 50-foot use, it will cut into wetlands within the trees that are located just past the wood lines. Now, for example, you can see there, on some of the examples that were brought up, you could actually see the blue line from the stream. That's within the 50 feet, and it goes back across Oak Orchard Road, and you see the back properties there. That's actually a ditch. That's a huge major drop-off, so it starts in those woods. So if you could even consider that lane almost wetlands from the way that we drive on it, because cars get stuck all the time, even if it hasn't rained in a couple days. So they're going to have major issues when Denwright goes to see that.
Which side of the lane are you talking about?
The wooded side.
But like on the Oak Orchard Drive or road side, or
If you see Jackson Drain Lane,
right?
and just before it reaches Chief Road, there's a stream that goes through and then cuts across and basically follows along the back properties along Oak Orchard Road. You see how they're all,
Right.
that's because it leads up to that ditch.
Now, when you say that, because there's woods on the other end of it, I wanted to make sure we were clear on which woods you were talking about, which end of the lane.
Yeah. But even if they go 50 feet in there, they're hitting wetlands, and most of the lane is wet all the time anyway. Furthermore, second, the location of the emergency entrance would be more encouraging for residents of the development to trespass onto our properties and along Jackson Drain Lane. Currently, we have issues with residents from the crossings at Oak Orchard, the trailer park that's right next to it. With additional houses and an entrance proposed by Stillwater, there will be inevitably more people trespassing onto our properties. Third, as a resident, I'm against any alteration of Jackson Drain Lane, including pavement, gates, widening of the lane, etc. As stated previously, alterations in effort to improve capacity for the use of Jackson Drain Lane would encourage public use for a lane that is not state maintained and impede resident access. Jackson Drain Lane has been maintained by its residents for many decades for the purpose of private access to discourage public use and is suitable for our current resident and agricultural needs. In summary, I do not consent to an emergency entrance on Jackson Drain Lane or any way for Stillwater's planned development to have access. It will heavily obstruct all residents of Jackson Drain Lane and our easements to access Chief Road. In addition, according to Sussex County, Delaware Deed Book 1119-3637, the property which Stillwater plans to construct an emergency access must be approved by a majority vote of the residents living on Jackson Drain Lane. And I have that information if you guys need that too. Some of the other concerns that I can remember off the top of my head was that there are no eagles in that area. I happen to own chickens that are free range. So every day I'm out there trying to fight off foxes, eagles, hawks, and 9 times out of 10, if it's an eagle, it comes from that area, and I see it happen at least once a week. So unless they're flying over those woods, I don't know why they would be flying over the woods, because they would be hunting out in the fields.
I don't know.
I think they're coming from there.
Okay.
And I think that's all I have for now.
All right, sir.
But I can answer any other questions. Like, I can see why they wouldn't want their main entrance there, because it leads right to the side of a trailer park to people's yards. So that's why they don't want the main entrance there. And I do have concerns that in the future that it will be a proposed main entrance just because of the flooding on River Road. And that would heavily impede us. I mean, a 50-foot easement for 100-something houses, you're looking at least 2 cars per house every day going on that lane. I would never be able to get out of it.
Actually, the 50-foot easement back there is wider than the easement for River Road, so.
Oh, I see.
The ability to take the traffic is probably debatable, but we understand and certainly will take into consideration your concern.
Okay, and I also know for most developments, they're required to build sidewalk for the main entrances too. And there's no way they could fit in full road and sidewalk and curb within 50 feet.
What was the easement code you cited?
Jan, do you have that paperwork? I can give you this.
Just the number is all I want. Submit it over there to the director.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, down this end, yeah, it's gotta be
Yeah, you
logged
can have
in.
this. It has the information. Jan has
Great.
the actual deed with it.
Thank you.
That's fine, what you've got on your page is fine, it just needs the reference.
Okay, I think that's all I have. Unless there's more questions.
He has the easement with him?
He has the deed
Okay.
that references what I was talking about.
Right. All right,
Thank
sir.
you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay, who's next? Representing a group. Yes, sir.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Robert Drain, the Drain part of the lane. The first speaker addressed the issue of,
Excuse me, sir, what group are you representing?
I'm representing the group opposing the Stillwater Harbor development. Isn't that what you asked for?
I asked for a spokesman for a group. You're a spokesman for the entire group, so no one else is going to speak?
No, I didn't say that.
I know you didn't say that, that's why I was asking you.
No, you're, okay.
Okay, just go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Now, just so everybody knows, is what we do is we ask if there's a spokesperson for an organized group just to speak first. That's why I think Mr. Wheatley was asking just what group you
which
were speaking
group
for,
you're
if you're
speaking
speaking for
Yeah,
yourself.
were you up here for like the residents of Oak Orchard or something? So, but no,
Just so
you're
we
just,
know,
you're
you're
just.
fine.
You're fine,
Go
go
ahead,
ahead,
you're fine,
go
go
ahead,
ahead.
you're fine,
Yeah.
you're fine, just, floor is yours.
Okay. The first speaker addressed the issue of Rosedale Beach and alluded to the history of the area. And I'd like to clarify some of that. First of all, before there was a Rosedale Beach, there was a Harmon's Park. And in 1899, a Noah Harmon, who was the son of Isaac Harmon, established Harmon's Park. It later became Rosedale when Dale and Rose Street bought it from Noah Harmon. And Jessie Bowles bought it in 1937 from the streets. And as she alluded to, it was a place of entertainment for people of color. But what you have to realize is that community is a community largely established by people of color and Native Americans. This Isaac Harmon, he owned 875 acres in that area. The current Patriots Glen is Isaac Harmon property. The Stillwater project is Isaac Harmon property. And the drain property is adjacent to the Stillwater project. My father bought that property in October of 1943. I was 4 years of age. The Jacksons bought their property behind us in July of 1943. And Jackson Drain Lane, as far as I can recall from my childhood, was established largely to accommodate the Jacksons living behind, which would be actually west of us and somewhat north of the Emory Jackson property, which is now Stillwater. But I think what is significant is that you have to understand the relationship that I've had with Stillwater. In July, August of 22, I got several letters from a Hal Stewart who indicated that he was a serious developer and would like to speak to me in terms of this particular project. I did not acknowledge the correspondence. I ignored it. In November, a representative from Stillwater came to my home, and he offered me $200,000 to give him access on my property to his to get to Chief Road. I declined. He came back later with a second offer. I declined. And then, some weeks later, I was advised that there was going to be a meeting on Jackson Drain Lane. We met with the representative from Stillwater and the lawyer representing the Harmon group that was selling the Fay Blanks and Bernie Blank's property. And we made it very clear at that point that we would not be inclined to sell them or allow them to use Jackson Drain Lane. I learned later that there was an easement. And I do recall my father in 1995 indicating to me that he had signed an easement so one Darrell Jackson could build a house on the property back there. And that's the basis for the easement. He signed it on the basis that Darrell could build a house, not a development. It wasn't explained to him at the time that what he was signing could potentially lead to a development. He had no sense of that. The person who encouraged him to sign the deed was Darrell's father-in-law, William Davis, and Daddy signed it. My concern is that Jackson Drain Lane will not support any type of traffic because, as Brett mentioned, there's a stream that runs through the wooded area, which is within 50 feet. And 95% of the access route will be on drain property, okay? 95%. Beyond that is Jackson property. But where the Stillwater Harbor entrance to Jackson Drain Lane will occur is at least 95% on my property. I'm opposed to it. And I think, for all the reasons that Brett mentioned, I concur with. But I think there is something else, and it's very important. That community is a community, largely, the property was owned by indigenous Americans and people of color. And what is happening is that that property ownership factor is being decimated. It's declining significantly because of developments. Currently, you have Patriots Glen, like I said, which is within a radius of 2 miles. You have the Moore property development on Oak Orchard Road. And you also have the Riverview Apartments on 24 and Oak Orchard Road. So 3 developments currently being constructed and 1 proposed within a radius of 2 miles. So you can't just talk about traffic from Stillwater. You got to take in conjunction the 55-acre development on the Moore property in Oak Orchard. You got to take into consideration these 6 apartment buildings on 24 and Oak Orchard Road, and the proposed 2 phases of Patriots Glen just down the road or going west on 24, which is Patriots Glen. So factor it all 4, not just 1, but 4, and think how long it's going to take for me at 83 years of age to access Route 24. And then when I get there, where am I going? Because I got Patriots Glen. You got Bayless. I mean, we're being surrounded and inundated by developments. So I'm adamantly opposed to it. Thank you.
All right, sir, thank you. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I'm gonna overlook that. You were explaining at the beginning that applause is not appropriate for the hearing. If it happens again, we'll just adjourn the hearing, okay? So let's just, no applause, it's not necessary, it's disruptive, and it extends the time of the hearing because I have to stop and give you this lecture, okay? So, now, with that being said, if there are any other spokesmen, we'll be happy to entertain them, or we can simply begin to entertain whomever would like to speak. So, any more spokespeople or attorneys that want to speak?
Is this a yes?
I think I know we have one on the way. I know there's one on the way. Okay.
I'm not 83 or 63.
I understood. Understood. You're next, and then this gentleman over here who is waving frantically, he can be next. Okay? He'll be after you.
My name is Charles Cullen Clark IV. That's my English name. My Indian name, my true name, is Little Al, a Maisukul one. I came here to obviously oppose Stillwater Harbor because I haven't heard anything on 2 legs, 4 legs, that crawls or creeps that has said anything that they want it. So I'm here to talk for that, for myself, and for everything that I represent. I came here holding my father's headdress because I like to bring him with me. But after hearing the lies, mistruths, twisting of reality, and bizarre talk of, for the first time in my life, that if we put in a development, it's going to help your flooding problems. So, please, everybody, I don't want you to kick me out. So, in that case, I'm going to ask this gentleman to please put on my war bonnet. Because this is war. In order so you know that what I say is the truth, I have to tell you who I am. I have to start off because I've been praying on this for 4 days. 4 is a very important number to Native American people. I've been praying for 4 days because I've asked the Creator to make me a hollow bone, to use my body, my ears to hear, my eyes to see, my heart to feel, and my tongue to talk. But first I need to invoke the words of my people to bring Creator into this room with us. Get timanato, naom tani, na wiyashoni, iwapagap nakadoni, alapawi namoni naki. I came here without papers. I'm probably the first speaker who, outside of the 2 gentlemen previous, who were not paid to be here. Consider that, please. We're here to speak. I'm here first now, after hearing some of these ridiculous lies, to clear up some nonsense. The lawyer said, and I don't use papers as a rule, but I had to make some notes to hear this ridiculous stuff. The lawyer says they didn't know that there was a burial ground a stone's throw from Stillwater Harbor. My first question is, what else don't they know? Do they also know there's another burial ground on the northwestern corner? I don't think so. The gentleman, Mr. Dream, you asked who we spoke for. This man's been on my road, which my grandfather had, Chief Road. That's what the reason it's called Chief Road is the Nanticoke Indian chiefs came from that area, came off that road. My grandfather, and I wish he hadn't done it now, turned it over to the state. And yeah, time goes on. But I will not have my ancestral lands and what my family has built be misperceived and misconstrued and twisted by out-of-state people who don't even know what they're talking about. To say that Riverdale Park is a mobile home park with 400 mobile homes, it shows how little research they've done. I am Lamaisukuawant Little L. I am the son of Chief Red Deer. I am the grandson of Chief Little L. I am the great-grandson of Chief Wanakako. I am the great-great-grandson of James Clark. My great-great-great-grandmother, Nagwa Okwa, which means she who bows her head in prayer, is buried in the ground which this person does not know about. She was 7 years old when the Revolutionary War broke out. She was 19 when Delaware became a state. She died in 1856. She is buried in the lands that we can see from where she rests to where they want to rape and destroy the land. I won't have it. Buried behind her, around her, is my beloved mother, who I lost on December 13th in 2020 to COVID. Buried next to her is my beloved father, who I lost in October of 2015. Buried next to him is my grandfather, Charles C. Clark IV, Charles Cullen Clark IV, Sr., Chief Little Owl. They don't know this. What else don't they know? I will not have what my family has worked hard for to be misconstrued. Riverdale Park. To call us landlords and developers, you're only half right. We're landlords. And we're landlords who don't rape the land. To say we don't have stormwater management is ridiculous. Let me tell you the truth about Riverdale Park before I go to what I really came here to say. I want to address everything they said. I ask you your patience. We were patient with the technical problems. I want you to be patient with me because I have a lot to say. Riverdale Park began over 120 years ago by my great-grandfather, William Russell Clark. He was holding powwows on the waterfront. This is before there was a Delaware Memorial Bridge, a Chesapeake Bay Tunnel, a Bay Bridge. People mostly got there by water or by horse and wagon. He had powwows there. And good people who liked the powwows and liked his land began to come to my great-grandfather and to say, "Chief, will you sell your land to us?" And he said, "No, I'll never sell it, but I'll rent it to you." And so he walked in his moccasins and paced off the lots himself for friends, for families that he knew. And because it is a beautiful spot, 1 became 2, 2 became 4, and now there are 400 families who call Riverdale Park home. But you need to really know what you're talking about before you talk about my family and my family lands. My grandfather, Chief Little Owl, the boat ramp area these people are talking about fixing over my dead body. Because my grandfather, Chief Little Owl, was killed near that boat ramp. He was killed protecting his land. He died April 13th in 1971. It was Easter. I was an 11-year-old boy. Being a farm boy, watching my grandfather bringing in 40 dump trucks of sand and dirt to fix and repair our beaches for the benefit of the families who live in Riverdale. He was there that day. And being a farm boy, I wanted to see the earth moving equipment. And so I watched it. And I stayed all day because I loved my grandfather. And at the very last part of the day, my grandfather came to me and said, "Boy," that's what he called me, and it made me feel loved. He said, "Boy, you stay here. I'm going to go show the man in the dump truck where to dump the last load of dirt." And I said, "Okay, Pop-Pop." I was 11. My friend Billy Collins was facing me. I was facing my grandfather as we walked towards the river. My grandfather made it 30 feet away when the driver of the dump truck popped the clutch and knocked my grandfather down in front of my 11-year-old eyes. My grandfather put his arm up, held on to the rear axle, It drug him for several feet. It seems like forever to this day. He lost his grip. And when he did, he rolled to the right. And that big wheel grabbed my grandfather and spun him around at least 3 times. When the driver saw what he'd done, backed over my grandfather, my 76-year-old grandfather was wriggling on the ground. His head was split open. His right foot was torn off. The driver jumped out of the truck, screaming, "I've killed Chief Clark. I've killed Chief Clark." And he went running down that narrow road, which at its widest is 46 feet, but I can show you a lot narrower spots on it. He ran down Chief Road, a river road, screaming, "I've killed Chief Clark." I rushed up to my grandfather after I asked my friend Billy, "What's that?" Because I was the only person who saw it. Billy turned his head over his shoulder and said, "That's your grandfather." And I ran up to my grandfather, and he was halfway up before I could get there. Head split open, foot tore off, blood everywhere. And his words to me were, "Boy, help me up. That guy doesn't know how to drive a truck. I want to give him a piece of my mind." And I said, "No, Pop, you have to lay down. You have to lay down." And he did not want to do it, and he fought me. I finally got him down. Nobody else was even watching. The men on the equipment were still doing their work. I got on my bicycle and I drove to my father's house down Chief Road. It's called Chief Road because that's where the family of my chiefs and my family have been forever. That's why it's called Chief's Road. I drove down on my bicycle. My father was working for the highway department. He had been a surveyor in the Seabees, and he was a surveyor for the state of Delaware. And a road inspector. He wasn't home. My mother was in the hospital with a gallbladder operation. She wasn't home. My older brother, Judge Clark, was out playing tennis with some friends. He wasn't home. My little sister, Lisa, 8 years old, was back in Riverdale playing with folks. She wasn't home. The only person was my sister, Kathy, 13 years old. And at that day, when I was still a child, because I stopped being a child that day, up until that day, I had been known as Happy-Go-Lucky Charlie. And I made a lot of jokes all the time. And I ran into the house screaming, "Kathy, Pop-Pop's been hurt." And she came out of the bathroom and said, "That's not funny." And I cried like I've never cried before or since. And I said, "I'm not kidding. He's hurt." Back in the time I'm talking about, there was only party lines. There was no dial 7 numbers. So I asked people at the party line, and at 11 years old, I called the state police. I called the Millsboro ambulance. I called my father's office, and they got him by radio. I called my mother, who passed out and fainted in her bed as I spoke to her. And then I drove my bicycle back down to my grandfather. By that time, there were 40 or 50 cars parked, and 30 or 40 people watching the chief die. And I, at 11 years old, pushed them all through and made them all turn their way. I would not let them watch my grandfather die. My grandfather died that day. He died protecting his land. To have strangers from out of state waving documents from Maryland that lose their authority at the state line is repulsive, insensitive, and I could say a lot less, but I'm trying to be a gentleman. I could say a lot more, but I'm trying to be a gentleman. This needs to be considered. How dare somebody misappropriate my family's name and my family's land? To call us a trailer park with 400 homes, you folks don't know a lot. The developers don't know a lot. We have 400 homes in that house. And that 400 homes in Riverdale, only 1/4 of them are manufactured housing. The rest of them are cottages, stick-built, some of them over 100 years old, all of them beautiful. And I take umbrage at lies being spoken at a public meeting in front of my taxpayers' dollars, agency, commission. You are working for us, not for developers. Sometimes it gets confusing for us because just like this is our first and only bite at the apple. This is the first, and all of us here, the first opportunity we will have to have your ear. These people, these folks, representing Stillwater Harbor, have had your ear since 2021. So, yeah, be indulgent with us, please. And I will apologize on behalf of the folks who were making comments. But I know why they're making this comment. It's not because they weren't listening to you, Chairman. It's not because they're ignorant. It's because it's awful hard to breathe properly with lies being shoved down your throat and in your ears. It's like being underwater. So please forgive them. On my behalf, I ask you. They meant no harm. But they could not believe their ears. You asked one question was asked: would it affect the property owners on River Road? You will talk soon. You'll hear soon from a lady named Annie Larson. Her property fence is right on the right-of-way. Every property there is right on the right-of-way. On that 41-foot strip of road, there are no shoulders. And I am astounded to hear that 90% of what I've heard today is all speculative. Nothing done. DelDOT hasn't done proper studies. They're waiting to hear what these guys are going to do. They're waiting to see if they can get easements from people. I can tell you right now, you're not going to get inch one from anyone. Not a single person. Because they're all going to stand up here after I'm done and tell you why they're not going to do it. I'm also going to speak on behalf of my good neighbor and friend, a man I respected all of my life. And I didn't learn until this past Sunday. I'm talking about Mr. Robert Drain Sr. You asked who he was speaking for? Sir, the group he was speaking for is the group of families who live on Jackson Drain Lane. I have lived here all of my life. When I was a boy and didn't know any better, I drove my bicycle down that road. Then when I got older, I began to understand what it meant not to trespass. And so I didn't. That road, and I have videos, and I want to show, and some pictures too. That road has always been 8 to 12 feet wide. When they talk about the stream that runs through, let me explain it to you. Jackson Drain Road goes east and west. To the east of Jackson Drain Road, literally, as far as you hold a dog on a leash, are several homes. They bought that land thinking they were going to have some privacy. So when they're talking about putting in a road, first of all, they haven't asked anybody for permission. Again, they're speculative, and they don't even know what they're talking about. The only easements I have seen is the easement that allowed Darrell Jackson and his wife Barbara Jackson to build a home in which their son, who spoke earlier, now resides in. He spoke quite well. I don't need to add to his words. He's an Anacoke like I am. He spoke well. What you need to know is this. The intention of the law and the intention of agreements means everything. It was never intended for anybody to take be allowed, by the grace of Mr. Drain's father, to have access to the farmlands and road. It was never intended to tack it on to 60 acres and then say now 123 people are going to get easements. That doesn't work that way. I will fight to the end to make sure it doesn't happen. I'm also going to take umbrage to the fact to say that we have no stormwater management. Let me tell you a little something about Riverdale Park. When my grandfather was killed in 1971, my dad didn't need a boy, he needed a man. My older brother was graduating high school young. He's a very brilliant man. He was skipped grades in school. He was 16 years old when he graduated high school. He's now a judge for the state of Delaware. My father needed a man and not a boy, so I learned how to drive a car and a truck at 11 years old. Because we had to measure all the lots because my grandfather and great-grandfather marched them off with their feet. My grandfather was killed. The last street he was working on was called Chippewa Avenue. All the streets in our park, with the exception of Clark Avenue, which is obviously where that comes from, the rest of them all have Indian names. And Chippewa Avenue was halfway completed. And here's some history for people out of state who don't know what they're talking about to learn something. My grandfather died when the road was half completed. My father and I, for the next year and a half or 2 years after we got over my grandfather's death, we finished that road. I was 13, 14 years old. And I was sitting on the back of my dad's pickup truck on the tailgate, wiping sweat off my brow. And then my father said, well, that's it. We're done, son. And I said, what do you mean? He said, 400 homes. We're done. And being dumb and young and liking money, I said, well, Dad, why are we stopping here? And I pointed to our fields, which abut against the property they want to destroy. And I said, Dad, why aren't we expanding Riverdale? Why aren't we going, making it twice, 3 times larger? We'll make more money, have more homes. And my father said, no, son, there's a few things. Number 1, don't be greedy. It'll get you nowhere in life and you'll lose in the end. Number 2, we can't just worry about homes for people. We have to worry about homes for the animals. In this field that we have left open, and I understood my father's wisdom not that long after, in those fields is where all the water that we could possibly get on that road soaks into our farmlands. To say we don't have rainwater management, no, we don't have the kind of stuff you want to put in. We don't do the destruction you want to do. Riverdale Park is mostly wooded. Why? Because woods help keep the land where it is. Delaware is, some parts of Delaware are under sea level. It has the lowest mean level elevation of any state in the country. So we have always kept trees there. These people will not do that. No developer does that. To every developer, a tree is an enemy. So part of our stormwater management runoff system is letting Mother Nature do her thing. Keeping open lands. We have beach lands open. We have close to 100 acres of farmland open. There is not one person's home in Riverdale that does not have very old trees on it. Older than anybody in this room is alive, over 100 years old. That's our stormwater management. Working with nature instead of working against it will always be the better bet. I want to also say that they mentioned the letter from the Secretary of the Department of Agriculture. Well, maybe they don't do their homework there either. I can tell you why there might have been a delay in that thing getting uploaded. Because your system was down. Your system was down today. We could not access the docket. Folks who've been just finding out about this haven't been able to get letters in. Other people have seen the map change. For a while, the description of this development was missing. So anybody wanting to get to it couldn't. And if they did get to it, stuff was missing. Some days the map showed just the one lot this developer has purchased on River Road. Other times it showed the whole 60 acres. Today, when your system wasn't working, one of the folks from our group who are opposed to Stillwater Harbor contacted the county and was told, well, if they just hit F5 on their computer keyboard, it'll fix it. Well, guess what? Who knew that? It's not our job to figure out what you guys do, you women and men and women do. It's not our job. We're supposed to know. So that answers that question. Everything I've heard from the developer is speculation. What could happen? What might happen? I know Mr. Drain is not going to sell his land. I had an awful lot of respect for him. And when I found out that he turned away $200,000 for a 60-foot wide strip of land, I'm going to add more to it. It would be less than 2 acres. That's how hungry they were. They're willing to give $100,000 per acre for farmland. And then they offered more. And then they came back to him a third time and said, well, what do you want? This man has integrity. That's why he didn't say any dollar amount. I want to talk too about this environmentalist person. I hope he had a good couple of days walking through a pretty piece of land, but that will not replace 63 years of living on it. I see eagles there all the time. I see hawks. I played in those woods as a boy. My family, the Jackson family, got along very well. We're all Indians. We get along well. I see eagles there every day. I see the eagles fly. I see the osprey fly with fish in their hands. And I see the hawks fly. I also see herds of deer on the fields that my father said will never be developed. Herds of deer, 15, 16, 20 head at a time. Wild turkeys coming out of the woods and the protection of the field, knowing everything is safe. That will all be gone. That will all be gone if this ridiculous proposal is allowed to pass. Where are they going to go? Because of decisions that this commission has made, everything else is already paved over and destroyed. There are only two last stands of woods in the area. This 50 acres, 57 acres, and the close to 50 acres of land that I own, that I get letters and developers all the time asking to sell, and I'm saying no. I've turned down offers. I get letters once, twice a week from Florida and mostly Illinois. There's no amount of dollars that they can write a check for, and I will always leave that land. When I leave this world, that land will be left as it is. There will never be a road in it, ever. That's because it was in the land belonged to my great-uncle Ferdinand Clark, and before him, it was in our family before that. When my grandfather died in 1971, he had that land, he bequeathed it to me, and I put one single lane road in it, and I named it Ferd's Lane in honor of my great-uncle, who was also chief of the Nanticoke Indian tribe. I'm going to talk also about engineers. I'm sorry to tell you, but sometimes their slide rules don't work, calculators don't work, and there's a reason why pencils have erasers, because everybody makes a mistake. How much can we trust engineers when Bayless Estate engineers designed a system which flooded out Indiantown Farm right next door to it, resulting in a multi-million-dollar lawsuit? I will not see that happen to my land. I will not see that happen to Clark property. They talk about no archaeological significance. Utter nonsense. It's considered a hot zone of archaeological activity. We also have paperwork, which will be demonstrated and displayed later on, where they denied having the State Historic Preservation Office even come and do a survey. I know Eddie Otter. He's not the State Historic Preservation Officer. He's a paid archaeologist consultant. Generally, when you pay somebody to do something, they do what you want. I mean, unless I'm in a different planet than anybody else, that's what I think usually happens. To say that there's no archaeological significance is utter nonsense, because when the Sussex County Sewer District came through, they did an archaeological survey of my family's lands, which abut against theirs. They found over 400 artifacts in no time. Those artifacts were taken by the county. They were going to be inspected with the county and state, and then returned to the Clark family, who are the rightful owners of those artifacts. Artifacts that come from my ancestors. That was, 10, 15 years ago when the sewer district went through? I'm still asking for those artifacts. And I'm making an official plea again. I want my ancestors' stuff back. So if I sound like I don't trust government, maybe it's because government stole things from my land and won't return it. That happened. I want it back. Also, to say they want to improve private lands without so much as even knocking on our doors, I find insulting. And I'm going to say this too. When the flooding, we get flooding all the time. I wish it was just 4 to 8 times. I also wish I drove the hour your person spoke about where there's only one car every 80 seconds. I've not been on that hour. I've never seen that hour. Trying to get down there is just, you ever hear of a blivet? A blivet is 20 pounds of manure stuffed in a 10-pound sack. That's what we're working with here, folks. It's a blivet. Can't take any more manure. It's ridiculous to say that there are no markers. They want to talk about putting a historic marker. There are several markers called gravestones. At the Harmon family graveyard, which you don't know about, next to your property, and at the Clark family graveyard, which you don't know about, and you admitted to today. We have markers. I also want to say about them just a couple more things. I can't even read my own handwriting. Oh. As far as the people of Stillwater talking, I know this land like the back of my hand. I can attest much more than somebody being paid to spend a couple of hours, a couple of days to look at some stuff. Because like I say, I've been there all my life. I went back there to watch the eagles fly. I went back there to look at the animals. To say they're not there means maybe didn't spend enough time there. That's what I have to say, what they've had to say so far. To rebuttal. Now I want to talk about me and my feelings. My family has been here for untold, uncountable numbers of years. We have been here so long that our DNA is in the land, and the land is in our DNA. I speak today on behalf of my people, the Nanticoke people. I speak on behalf of myself, and I speak on behalf of someone who cannot speak for herself and needs someone else to speak for her. A little place called Mother Earth. I speak for the two-leggeds, the four-leggeds, those who have wings, those who have fins, those who fly through the air, and those who crawl. And I can say none of us want another development. None of us need it. In my lifetime, I have watched a beautiful place called Sussex County being destroyed by short-sightedness. We don't have to pave everything that is green. We don't have to. We have a choice. We have a choice of what we're going to do for the future. Not just today, but for the future. There are no more areas for the wildlife in our area. If you allow this to happen, we will see a dramatic extinction. Not decrease, but a dramatic extinction of the life that's there. I've never seen a development encourage wildlife. It doesn't happen. I also need to say this. The flooding problems that we have been addressing are getting more and more worse the more you do allow development on the uplands. We are along the coast. We are the bottom, no pun intended, low man on totem pole. That's us. When I was a boy, River Road flooded once or twice a year. My siblings and I used to like it because it was warm water, nice and clear, and we used to play in it. Now it floods routinely, and not just from nor'easters, not just from hurricanes, but from rainwater. I have a video I would like to show parts of to show exactly what I'm speaking about. It floods so badly that the land that my grandfather was killed to protect now floods all of the time. And I'm not talking about just high tides and winds blowing it in. I'm talking about rainwater. So how can I, what do I have to do to show this video? Okay, thank you. Well, I'll tell you what, since you have that one up, if you play that, that is Jackson Drain Lean. Please show that one. I flew my drone, I'm a technological Indian. I flew my drone over that road. Please play it. Please play it all. I want you to see where it comes out. Okay. I want you to see how it comes out to where it meets Chief Road. Now, if you notice, on the other side of the road are homes. If you look to the woods you see on the south, on the south side of that road, is Mr. Drain's property. Keep going, please. Oh, is it just it's slow?
It's so large, it's buffering.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, thank you, sir. That's the width of the road. That's the dirt road. That's the widest it's going to get. Now, right there is the intersection of Chief Road and Jackson Drain Lane. You cannot go into Mr. Lane's property and make it wider without taking his property. The woods you see to the left is my family's property. The stream Mr. Drain talked about runs from his property under the road because they put a culvert there and into our property. So you have wetlands on either side of that area. There was a creek in that woods, my family's woods, that when I was a boy I could straddle because there wasn't much runoff. I used to straddle it and be able to catch salamanders. Because of all the development all around us, sometimes it can be like a little river. We're having our trees falling in. I don't want to see any more destruction of my land because of that. This here shows the actual angle of Chief Road intersecting with Jackson Drain Road. Now, if you look to the right of your screen, right of that road, those are privately owned homes that are right against that road, that lane. You cannot go north because I don't think they're going to sell you their land either. And if you go to the south of it, you're going to go right into Mr. Drain's property. That is not a proper road for an emergency road, and it's definitely not a good spot for an entrance. You'd have to take the man's land to do it. I wanted you to see this because I have a feeling not too many of you ever walked that spot to see. A picture says 1,000 words. That is the road we're talking about when it comes to Jackson Drain Lane. Now, who in their right mind thinks that's a good place for a fire truck to go down? And I don't care. I'll put it this way. This is not my first rodeo, folks. I know what happens when the fire department gets involved, and I'm ashamed to say I'm ashamed of them. What happens is this: if you remember when the peninsula was coming in, I was present because my land abuts against the peninsula. The fire department came out against it several times until the peninsula said, "Well, we will buy you a new pumper, and we will give you $100,000 a year in perpetuity if you will not vote against us, not write any letters against us." That's what happens. I am not saying that such agreements are made with Stillwater Harbor, but I'm saying it's suspicious because the fellows who I know who work in the fire department say, we're not taking our $500,000 equipment down that road. And if Mr. Drain and the folks who used it wanted it paved over, they would have paved it over themselves. They don't need Stillwater's help. I haven't heard anybody ever ask for Stillwater's help. Another problem that we're having here is the people of color, the Native American people and people of color who live back there. The reason they're back there off the beaten path is they want to stay off the beaten path. I find it offensive that taxpayers in Delaware's concerns could come second to people who aren't even here yet. That's offensive to me. It's offensive to me to find out that people can play fast and furious with the truth and get a development this far along when I'm hearing all kinds of things that aren't figured out yet. No one's talked to the local landowners on River Road about acquiring their property. But I can tell you right now, no one's going to give an inch. And why should they? I understand the county has to have growth. But overgrowth, by definition, is cancer. We need to stop the cancer from eating up Sussex County, what little is left of it. Let me also talk about the safety issues on River Road. I don't know where they're getting their numbers from, but I can count more than 2 accidents and try to keep a mailbox or a fence up on River Road because it's so narrow. There fences and mailboxes get knocked down on a routine basis. None of this makes any sense. It doesn't make any sense to put it this way. If their plans were well thought out and well executed and smelled of common sense, then why would they even go through the problem of looking for a second way in? I'm offended that that's even thought about. Why did it get this far when this hasn't been figured out yet? That hasn't been figured out yet. It makes no sense to me. And when things don't make sense, I get suspicious. The people in our community need to be protected. We are stretched to the limits now. If we have a crime in the area, because of all the congestion we already have, the police response is not fast. I'm not casting any aspersions on state police. I have a good relationship with them because I need to. But they are like complaining. Everybody's complaining about the overdevelopment. And I'll tell you right now, part of our group called Save Oak Orchards, who's wholly opposed to this, a good portion of them are people who haven't been here for millennia, like the Nanticoke, who have been here for 200-300 years, like many other families here. These are people who moved 5, 4, 6 years ago, thinking they're buying into a little piece of paradise, and now come in our meeting saying, if I had known what Sussex County was going to do, I would have never bought a house here. There have been so many people coming to our meetings, our town hall meetings about that. And that should tell the county something. When it comes to the flooding, putting development is going to help us. I've never heard that one before. I do know this. I do know my Senator Carper, stood right in front of my grandfather's house, now the home of my brother, Judge Clark, standing there with cameras rolling saying, we have to fix this. This flooding problem is ridiculous. We're going to look into it. And the senator did. The same thing happened with our state representatives. I'm going to look into this. We're going to have studies. And we've had study after study after study. Not one suggestion is what's going to help is let's put another 123 homes there. That'll fix your problems. Ridiculous. It's ridiculous. It's an offense to my brain. I feel that this thing should be kicked in the head tonight. I feel this thing should be knocked down and stopped. There is no reason for something to get this far with speculation, falsehoods, twisting the truths, denigration of history, twisting of my family's name and what we have. Not even be able to, if you can't tell the difference between a mobile home and a cottage, you should not be in the business of developing places. That's just the truth. Maybe it's just me. I want to also say I'd like to show a little bit of the flooding, because I don't believe you folks have quite seen what I'm talking about. Is it possible to cue up that flooding video, sir? There's some volume to it. I mean, if you want to put the audio on, that's fine. You might not like what you hear, but please do it. I'm not here to make friends. I'm here to make a difference.
Is it family friendly?
What's that?
Said I might not like it, what I hear. Is it family friendly? We have, you know.
Oh, it's very. I mean,
Okay.
some of the people here might not like, because I talk about the overdevelopment. That's what I'm speaking of.
Do you remember which video it is?
It'll say Stillwater Harbor at the very bottom, I believe.
There you go.
That's it. Yep.
Greetings.
Please turn the volume up.
I'm Charles C. Clark IV, Lamaisukul, Little L.
Please
and the
turn it
town
up.
of My people, the Nanticoke. We have lived here on the banks of the Indian River for a long time, and we have watched the encroaching Clark. Greetings. I am Charles C. Clark IV.
2 seconds. That's as loud as I can make it. Right.
Greetings. I am Charles C. Clark IV, Lamaisukul, Little L, in the tongue of my people, the Nanticoke. We have lived here on the banks of the Indian River for a long time, and we have watched an encroaching problem.
The AV information to the back room, so because it comes through the room sounds.
I understand. I can make shadow puppets, keep everybody busy for a while.
That's physically as loud as the interface will let me. And the only thing to do is just as
can't get
loud
the
as we
volume?
make it. The folks watching online can probably hear it.
Okay.
But see,
Just show it then, sir. Thank you very much.
Become
Well,
a greater threat to all
it'll
of
speak
us.
for itself, I believe.
Flooding.
What I did, and this
Some
is
more
just a
houses,
coincidence,
some more developments.
I flew
they
my
have built
drone
around
over flooding.
us here
This
in
is
the Indian
flooding
River
from a
community
storm.
of
It is not
Riverdale
from,
and Oak Orchard.
I'm flooding
Our
from
two
stormwater.
communities
It is
are
not
being
flooding
swamped
due
under
to
by
the
vast
nor'easter.
overdevelopment
This is the
in
land
the
that they're
uplands
talking
away from
about.
us.
They are going to
Water
improve
will always
without
seek
ever talking
its
to me.
lowest level.
My brother and I now own that land.
Here is the intersection
That's the flood.
of Chief Road and River Road. River Road is the primary roadway through Riverdale and Oak Orchard communities. And if you look at these lands, you will see.
That's the boat ramp that
Flooding.
they never asked my permission.
And this is
to
not
cruise,
a bad
but they want
storm.
to tell me
This
Denmark
is not a
won't do it.
hurricane. This has
I believe if
become
Denmark could have done
a
something, our
very
state
familiar sight.
representative would make
When I was
sure
a
of it,
boy,
and I think
me and my
Senator Harper
siblings
also.
would look forward to maybe once a year running down to River Road and playing in her higher waters. Now I am a 63-year-old man. And in that time, I have seen this river
This is the swelling of the creeks.
overcome the land. You will see here the wetlands. The wetlands of the world, the wetlands of our area are the lungs of our world. They cannot be overwhelmed. And yet we human beings are doing
All of
this
this is overwhelmed in the river.
without thinking. Because we put trust in public officials. Public officials who do not think too far ahead.
That's the part I'm talking about.
When you look down upon these images of the Oak Orchard community and the Riverdale community, you will see the effects of flooding. These are no longer a once a year or twice a year event. These are recurring problems that all of us who live here deal with constantly. Shown here from above is a good part of Oak Orchard. What you see there in people's yards is water.
Rainwater.
Water knee deep
Not
and hip
flood
deep.
water from the river.
Water that has overcome the land herself. All because human beings have tried to overcome the land. This
That's
here
Chief Road,
is the
River Road.
intersection of River Road and Chief Road. Just look at how deep that water is. There was no storm. There was no hurricane. This is just a routine occurrence. And what is very upsetting is while our county officials are actually considering letting a huge development be built on this very road, they are forgetting that our local officials, our state officials, and even our U.S. Senator Tom Carper have been trying to stop the problems of flooding in the Oak Orchard and Riverdale communities. What you're looking at now is a piece of land, 59 acres of land, that another developer, yet another one, from outside of Delaware, wants to come in. And the trees you see there, the majority of them will be gone. Those trees that hold back erosion and that soak up rainwater and all the things that produce floods, this one section of trees will be gone very quickly. Just because somebody wants to put more people on a piece of land where more people are the problem. Our county had lots of time to consider its planning, and they have failed us. So now we, the people, must take control. And we must tell them not just what we want, but what we demand. Do you want your life changed here? If this development, called Stillwater Harbor, goes through, you are going to have at least another close to 300 cars instantly on the roads. The roads that you ride every day, River Road, Chief Road, Oak Orchard Road, will have 300 more cars overnight. And that problem will just grow over time. Now, as you look to the right of these trees, those are the Clark farmlands. One of the things that is helping that land absorb water is my family's commitment to living with the land. We have not put another home on Riverdale since 1972-73. My father told me we had to leave homes for the animals as well as build homes for the people. There is a way of balancing growth with preservation. It is not an either-or situation. It takes some higher thinking, looking beyond the almighty dollar, and being true to your own heart. This here is the tail end of Oak Orchard.
Rainwater.
Look at the water. Look at the water in people's yards meeting the water of the Indian River. This did not happen when I was a boy. It's happening now. Right here is the intersection of Oak Orchard Road and River Road. The water there stayed for days. There was no place for it to run. The more development, it's a very simple thing.
500 yards
The more development they make on the uplands
Rainwater.
will affect us here closer to the water.
Engineers don't know it
We will always be the people who feel it the most because we dared to live close to the embrace of the beautiful Indian River. And the people who have overbuilt past us are making a problem that we must deal with. So I ask you to please support the Save Oak Orchard group. Support our efforts. We want to stop the Stillwater Harbor development from coming so our lungs of the earth here can live and so that all of us.
I think a picture says 1,000 words.
It does.
I also want to say, in closing, I respect the county. I respect all of the jobs you hold. I respect the job you do. I just ask that we be respected too. We, the people. Something has happened where we, the people, come last. Like I said, this is our only bite at the apple. This is our only chance to make ourselves voices heard. Stillwater has had your ear for 3 years, 2 years. We have it for a few hours. On behalf of my family, on behalf of my ancestors, some of whom you don't even know where they're buried. Let me give you something else before I leave here. They found the 400 artifacts, which I went back from the county. They had the 400 artifacts. They didn't know they were there. I did and my family did. Tribes are like families. We don't tell all of our secrets. Until in the 1980s, it was legal in Delaware to dig up Native Americans. My father and I worked hard for many years to get the first law passed in any state to protect Native American graves. We thought that would give protection. But even after the law was passed, every time Indian grave robbers were found, the judges just said, well, it's not that important. It's just a jar of teeth. Yeah, my ancestors' teeth. And so for that reason, like a family has its secrets, my tribe will not ever disclose where all of the burial grounds are. They didn't know about 2 cemeteries. They don't know about other graves. And I'm not going to tell anybody where they are because I don't want Eddie Otter or any other archaeologist digging them up. That's why my father and I worked for years to get that law passed. There are significant historical things in the area. The developers just do not know about it. And I am not going to divulge where things are. I respectfully ask you, implore upon you, to kick this thing in the head, here and now, tonight. And for one more reason. The families who live in Riverdale, the people who live in Oak Orchard, they say when they turn off of Oak Orchard Road onto Chief Road after a hard day's work and a bumper-to-bumper traffic ride these days, they say, Charlie, when we turn on the Chief Road and drive through your family's lands, it's like going back in time. It's like they love the scenic views, which is one of your 17 issues you're supposed to protect, the scenic views. I'm here to say I want those scenic views protected. Another thing that's part of the regulations is not disturbing the quality of life. I am telling you, you will disturb my quality of life. You will disturb the quality of life of 2,000 people who call Riverdale home, if not all year round, then parts of the year. That has to be factored in. So on behalf of my family and myself, I implore you, give us a sign that the madness ends here tonight. It will lift us all up. It will give us hope. I'm adamantly opposed to this petition, and I respectfully ask that it be denied. Thank you for your time, and thank you for listening to me.
All right, sir. Thank you. All right, sir. I believe the gentleman over here, if he's still here. Yeah, there you go. You're next.
I'm Myra Brittingham, and I'm opposing this Stillwater development. Okay? There was several things that brought to my interest today is that they was talking about the buying of the property. They're going to have to make the road wider.
Yeah.
Well, they're going to have to buy my property, and that would never happen.
Okay.
And not only my property, Dana, her grandmother, they tried to buy Dana's property, and none of us will sell on that side of the road. Okay? Yep. Now, the other thing is, the road is only about 43 feet wide.
Okay.
I don't know how they're going to get a decrease. I can't say the word properly. You understand me?
Yeah.
Okay. In the lanes, it's only 43 feet wide without buying properties in whatever they have to do on that. Okay. Right. And then they said they need 800 feet, and they only got 120 feet of land there. Now, I hadn't noticed that. The other thing, on the flooding issue, if they would bring that print back up again to show where they're going to, what do you show that was going through the property? Do you know where that is at on the film?
Well, we saw it. Go
Did you
ahead.
remember
We
seeing
saw
it?
it. We saw
That's
it.
good.
Yeah.
That's
We
fine.
saw it.
Okay, the problem with that is, number one, they don't have an easement for it. Number two, there's been no money issued for this property. That's my neighbor. and he's unable to attend it today because you had it so early.
Okay.
But the thing of it is, they have no easement yet, and my understanding, that it's going to cost about $30 million to fix this up down there.
Okay.
So that's just some other thing I did want to point out to you today. So anyway, I think that's about all I had.
All right, sir.
Thank
Well,
you.
Thank you.
I thank you for listening. Thank you.
All right, we'll take one from this side all the way in the back, the lady with her hand in the air, and then we'll come back to this side. Okay,
We covered all the stuff, so. Make a difference.
My name is Dorothy Dobbin, and I've lived in Riverdale since June of 2009. I have a master's in urban planning. I worked in the housing and community development field as a career, and I'm retired now. I sent in a letter, but I want to just hit on a few points in reaction to what was said today. I agree. I understand how this process works. They're coming to ask you for permission. You know, they can present all the law and all the facts and all the speculation, and then you give them permission, but where are the guarantees? You know, how do we know? I mean, DelDOT hasn't even really studied things. They admitted that. Our concerns are primarily the flooding and the safety on the road. You could see the road has many turns in it and blind spots, and their entrance to their development as proposed is at a blind spot. With the water, they say their plans for stormwater management is going to alleviate. Where is the water going to go? When we saw their first plan with just 3 stormwater ponds, a person from Denarec spoke up at that meeting and said, and the pipes go underneath and into the wetlands. Okay? Well, the wetlands are swollen and are causing the flooding now. The water has to go somewhere. So what are the guarantees? You know, we haven't heard any kind of guarantees about anything today. We've just heard speculation. And as people have said, the homes along River Road, most of them are up against the road or close to it. And there's no room to widen that road. Current residents along the road and in the adjacent communities do not want this development because we live there. We know how many cars are going, how fast they're going. We know that 1,258 cars more, as an estimate, is going to make a huge difference and will endanger us. And there are laws in place that I would think the Planning Commission would be following, like the Quality of Life Act of 1988 says the most appropriate use of land, water, and resources consistent with public interest and to deal effectively with future problems that may result from the use and development of land within their jurisdictions. That's a law that should be followed. The people who are here should be considered what we're going to experience. Even Denarec has, this summer I was at a fair at Trap Pond, and I picked up a flyer about wetlands, okay? And I looked at that the other day before I wrote my letter, and it states and cautions residents to avoid wetlands if you are building or expanding your home or shed. Well, how can you approve 123 units of housing that will be built on land that was a forest, that was there soaking up the water, and expect it not to impact the wetlands? The same piece of literature stated that during Hurricane Sandy, reports showed that storm surge, was reduced from 9 to 5 feet by wetlands absorbing wave energy in coastal wetlands. So what are we supposed to do? Just wait and have faith that this developer from Maryland, who couldn't do what he wants to do in Maryland because of their laws, okay, is going to do the right thing for us? No. This is about making money and putting as many units on that property as possible and, not really caring about who's there first. So we implore you to do what we expect you to do and hold up those laws and the comprehensive land use plan for Sussex County and make the right decision and deny this approval.
Okay. Yeah, she came from that side. We're back over here. Yes, ma'am, you, left hand in the air. Come on, with the mask.
Hello, I'm Janet Leddy-Gavel, Milton, Delaware. One thing that I want to say that was a little unsettling to me was it sure did sound to me like the attorney for the developer was threatening the commission that they would sue if they didn't approve this. Because I did hear her cite the Tony Ashburn versus Kent County and say Mr. Robertson's name. Well, just let you know, all the people in this room here, if you approve this, can hire a land use attorney and sue the county as well if you approve.
Threaten us too.
No, I'm just telling you.
Okay.
Suggestion.
All right. Duly noted, and let me assure you that I do not feel threatened by her or you. Now,
Good.
if you have something else to add that has not been said, I would like you to go ahead and say it. Other than that, I would like you to sit down.
I do. The developers in the PLUS report, a lot of the answers were we will comply. But who will be the watchdog? So if the developer cuts through the buffer, who will be the watchdog? It's going to take a resident to call the county and say, we think they cut into the buffer.
There's inspections that happen on a regular basis by the authorities.
Okay, so also the superior design, they're decimating 43 wooded acres out of 48. I don't call that superior design. You're in the county code, you're supposed to preserve the environmental features of a parcel. And cutting down 43 out of 48 acres, in my opinion, I'm not a biologist, but that's not superior design. There were letters from Department of Ag and DENREC saying there is drainage issues, and I'm going to cite a little bit of the code here. 99C.
Ma'am, we don't need you to cite 99C. We wrote 99C.
Right, okay, well, there's 12, well, let's say 11.
17.
No, there's 11 issues that I'm going to read, quoting 99.9C. Integration of the proposed subdivision into existing terrain and surrounding landscape. Cutting down all those acres, do not do that. Minimal use of wetlands and floodplains, does not do that. Preservation of natural and historical features, does not do that. Preservation of open space and scenic views, does not do that. Minimization of tree vegetation and soil removal and grade changes, does not do that. Screening of objectable features from neighboring properties and roadways, does not do that. Prevention of pollution of surface groundwater, does not do that. Minimization of erosion and sedimentation, minimization of changes in groundwater levels, minimization of increased rates of runoff for potential flooding, and design of drainage so that groundwater recharge is maximized. Provision for safe and vehicular and pedestrian movement within the site and to adjacent ways. All those reasons that are stated in 99C, this development does not comply with. One other thing that I'd like to state. There was a meeting with someone on the commission here with one of the residents in the room tonight, and that commissioner said to the resident, if we don't approve, if all 17 conditions have been met, the county will be sued. That's the second time I've heard that. I had a commissioner say that to me personally, and one of the residents in this room told me that a commissioner said that to this resident that's in the room. And I also emailed Mr. Whitehouse so I could get an answer, and I didn't get an answer. The code is written, but we also have to use common sense. The attorney can have their paid, the developer can have their paid professionals, their attorney, their 2 engineers, their Del Dot person, they're paid. Edlin R., paid soil scientist. We're not professionals. We're just residents speaking. So you're going to hear their side because they have their paid professionals. You have to use common sense with this parcel. This is a wet parcel, and it will be dangerous for the people trying to either evacuate or just rushing home or rushing to work. Thank you very much.
Okay, all right. Well, we're going to go on this side. Yes, sir, right here. Please don't read us the code.
Trust me, I will not read you the code.
I don't know, but he might get a specialty.
No. I will.
Judge, I don't know.
Despite my occupation, I'm not a big public speaker, so.
Understood,
But
and you are.
I'm the big brother that you heard my brother mention.
Okay, well, apparently I've been living under a rock for 20 years because I have no idea who you are. But I'm glad to meet you.
We park in the same parking lot, so. But anyway.
But you do have to state your name for the
You
record.
do have to state your name for the record.
Sorry, yeah, my name is Kenneth Clark.
This is the first time I've met you.
That's quite all right. And thank you, Commissioners. I'm a little tired. I'm sure you're all tired, too. But my name is Kenneth Clark. And I usually try not to have to come up and speak like this, but I am the landowner on all sides of the Chief Road, River Road intersection. I own all that land. My brother owns a little piece of the beach you saw there, but I own the piece right off River Road that has the boat ramp on it, and we rent out that beach also to a boat club for their boat members to have boat slips there. I've lived there all my life. I live in my grandfather's house right on that intersection. I see that flooding more than anybody in this room or anybody else ever sees it because it's my land. It's right where I live. It comes up into my driveway. Sometimes I can't go. I have to drive out across the yard and in the field to get out of my house sometimes. I do have some photographs I'd like to submit because every once in a while when we have bad flooding there, I go out and I take photographs of it. And I can show you what the beach normally looks like, and I can show you exactly that intersection, what the sign's there, and how it looks when it's floods. Sometimes it is over waist deep. And that's a combination, I know, in those instances of rainwater and flood, but it's a bad situation there. And it's not going to get any better because it's low. It's at sea level. But I have submitted a letter, but I want to point out a few things. And I also want to take some issue with a couple of comments that were made. Someone said that, well, one of the people opposing are developers. Well, we own a development, if you want to call it that. We own an old community that's been in our family for over a century. But in 1972, we made the decision, the conscious decision, to leave the other 100 acres of farmland as farmland and to farm it. And we did farm it. My grandpa farmed it. I helped him. My dad farmed it. I helped him. We had the old 3-row tractors. And you can't do that nowadays, so we still farm it. The land that adjoins and abuts this proposed development, and we farm it with the help of neighbor farmers, who have bigger equipment. But we made that conscious decision because we know it floods there, and because we're not greedy, and because we like the farm. I mean, I grew up on a farm, and I want to always have some of it there. This threatens it. The flooding is bad. And someone said, I think one of the presenters for the applicant said that flooding will not go away if Stillwater is not built. Well, of course it won't, but it will get worse if Stillwater is built. And you can listen to all the data, and I got overwhelmed by the data. I'm not here to present data. I heard all this data, but sometimes, data, you can get lost in the trees with it until the trees are all cut down, and then you've got flooding. To live there every day of your life, to live there for decades and to see what happens, then you know what really is what's going on there. All the natural flow of all the runoff comes right to the River Road, Chief Road intersection. When I was a kid, that was my school bus stop. I'd stand there, wait for the bus. It only flooded back then, and this is in the mid-'60s, maybe once every 2 years, once every 3 years. Then they built on Oak Orchard Road, they built right next to this proposed development. They built Oak Meadows and Driftwood Village and eventually a couple other developments at Captain's Grant. And I noticed then when I came home from college, now it's flooding the beach out and flooding the intersection out, not once every 2 or 3 years, but once a year. And then I went away to law school. I lived in California for a few years, but I moved home to have a family back in 1985. And when I came home, now it's flooding even more rapidly and deeper. And it's a direct consequence. Nothing changed. Nobody talked about global warming back then. The only thing that really changed was the new developments. They're there, these mobile home parks. You know, all the farmland that was there and the trees that were there that used to absorb the water no longer absorb it, and it runs right to my house. My grandpa was smart. The intersection's low. My house is right on that corner of the intersection, but it's up a few feet off the ground. But he put a full basement in that house. And it floods. When we have those floods, and I'll show you photos, sometimes we have to have the sump pump going constantly. But I love that spot. I've been there forever. I'm not leaving that spot. I don't think it's fair for newcomers who have, for out-of-state people to do a development that more than likely will be sold to other out-of-state people. And it's going to adversely impact my land and my property and all of our tenants' homes as well. We want to keep farmland. If the runoff gets worse, it's going to mess up that side of the farmland. It won't be as arable. I know it won't. I don't want to have to move from my house. If the flooding gets worse, that could happen. I live in the house that my grandpa built almost 100 years ago. And, I'm going to leave it to my children. And my daughter's here. She lives there in the area. We don't want this to happen, please. I know there are a lot of technical arguments I could try to make, but the flooding is very bad there. They made a comment that, well, you can, DelDOT or DENREC can come in here and put something on my land.
You have a letter in the record, I believe.
I do, so I'm not going to go over all that.
Yeah, so your technical arguments are on the record.
Thank you. DENREC or DelDOT, no one's contacted any of my family or me about doing something for to improve the drainage or for flooding abatement on my beach there. I do know early on there were some talks. I went to a couple of talks with a couple of representatives. What got back to me years ago was that they can do something at the other end at Oak Orchard, but where I live, there's not a lot that can be done necessarily. So I don't believe their proposals. And not only that, but they would have to have my consent and approval and agreement, and I'm not doing that, and I'm not selling that land. My brother told you in long detail, about my grandfather and how he passed away on that beach. What he didn't tell you was, when I was only 14, my grandpa actually came and gave me a deed to that beach. That was the first piece of Riverdale that I personally owned. He gave it to me on my birthday. He showed me the deed. He walked me around a lot and showed me where my boundaries were. And then he said to me, son, don't you ever sell this land or any land I give you. And I promised him I wouldn't. And that's how my family feels. We're not selling our land. We've been here for many, many generations. And we try to be good shepherds for the land. This, all the data, like I said, can tell you that, these retention ponds will work or the drainage systems we're going to put in are going to work. But they're all done by human beings, and human beings can make failures and mistakes. And you can also, I know you have all that evidence in front of you, but you can also consider evidence of simple facts like testimony that the flooding has gotten repeatedly worse over the last 40 to 50 years, and I've watched it with my own eyes, and the only direct cause I can see is additional development. That's the only thing that's changed the runoff. You can take that and you can apply your own deductive reasoning to it, and that's just as good a fact to base your decision on as all this data that is presented to you by paid professionals. Like I said, I haven't mentioned the traffic. I think a lot of other speakers will talk about the traffic. But I also, at that intersection, when I was raising my daughters there in the 80s and early 90s, I could sit out on my front porch and I would see, even in the height of summer, 3, 4 cars an hour go by my front porch. Now I can't walk to my mailbox without 5 cars passing me before I get back up the driveway to my home. Wintertime, summertime, year-round. And I've not been able to figure that part out because up until recently, there wasn't a lot of added development since the 90s, but from the 90s to the 2000s, boy, the traffic up and down River Road is just incredible. And I don't think the traffic data that is picked up by DelDOT reflects all of it. I see cars going by constantly. And I was appreciative of a comment that someone made on behalf of the developer that they're worried about Jackson Drain Road. It's not fair to those people to have all of a sudden have traffic by their property. Well, they also said that if they come out on River Road out of this proposed development, they're going to turn left or right. If they turn left, the next thing they do is turn left again up Chief Road, and they're going right by my house. And another 600 cars a day is just, it's untenable. That's not a road for that. I could say a lot more, but I did present a lot of it in my written statements. And as I said, I'm not that good a public speaker. I'm better at lecturing people, maybe, but not. But I'm not getting paid to do that.
Maybe I can take a few lessons from you.
None of you are the people that need to be lectured. So, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. All right, sir. Thank you. Okay, back to this side, all the way in the back with the baby. I'm always a pushover for a baby, so.
Okay. Is it one set or are there multiple sets? Just read out.
My name is Colby Norwood. I'm here on behalf of Ida Wheatley.
Okay, everybody, let's listen up, okay? Let's let this gentleman say his piece.
My name is Colby Norwood. I'm here on behalf of Ida Wheatley, and this is my family. So, we are not selling our property to 32069 River Road, the proposed entrance to Stillwater Harbor.
Right.
We do not want to sell we are not selling our property. One, unfortunately, the DelDOT guy left because the road frontage issue would put their turn lane 5 feet from the back of our house.
Yeah. Okay.
That's not safe for us to get in and out, my daughter now to get in and out, or anything.
Okay.
Their house was hit. Their house was all white. The house that they have just west of ours was hit in 2006, and my neighbor was killed right in Wheatley Lane. Because that road and that intersection or stretch of road, it curves twice, and it's not a safe road. So that is on behalf of my grandmother, my great-grandmother, actually. Now, on behalf of me, I am a fireman, a full-time fireman at Lewis Fire Department. I have been a fireman since I was 14 and a EMT since I was 18. I'm going on 29 years old now. And this state, especially this county, is not up to par on emergency response. I don't know which one of you said it earlier about the response times.
Our resident expert on EMT.
So that is for in-quarters paid paramedics and EMTs.
Okay.
That is not for the fire departments. So they're all volunteer. And especially where this development's going, they have no way to transport people to the hospital. They have not contacted the transport company that covers this area. So the company that covers this area, they have 2 BLS crews 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, hopefully, bar call-outs and whatnot else. Our primary medic unit is one crew, which is paid for by the county. You have 2 medics on that. State requires 2 medics. At any point, there are more calls for service than ambulances required in the Indian River Mid-Sussex Rescue Squad local. Just the other day, I went to Long Neck Road from BB Hospital at my full-time job. The next due ambulance closest is Millsboro. Millsboro's a town, very busy. Not always the next due. Your next due ALS unit, paid for by the county, is coming from either Dagsboro, Georgetown, or Lewis, Plantations Road, Mulberry Street, or I forget where 103 is at, but it's in Dagsboro, just off of 20. That is a 20-plus, probably 30-plus minute response time from any of those 3. 104 covers Rehoboth, Lewis. It's a beach town. Everybody's getting calls for service down there.
Okay, so let's tie this all together now as to how
Their emergency entrance, the Knox box that they talk about, it is only for the home company, Indian River, and if 91 has them, which is Mid-Sussex Rescue Squad. So if those 2 are out on other calls for service, Millsboro, Lewis, Rehoboth, Georgetown, whoever comes to the district will not be able to access that emergency road off of Jackson Drain if that is allowed. So, do you want to give them this? And have some paperwork for you guys.
Okay, you can hand that up to our director. He'll be happy to receive it.
But the emergency side, it is poor planning, and the entrance is very poor planning. That's all I have to say.
All right, sir, I just have one question for you. Are you as well behaved as your daughter is?
That's where she gets it from.
Thanks for being a first responder.
By the way, I don't know if y'all heard that. He said that's where she gets it from. Okay. All right. As you can see, I'm a little more tolerant for laughter than I am applause, but let's go over on this side again. Anybody left over here that wants to speak? Yes, sir. Okay.
One thing, too, while this gentleman's coming forward, we're getting documents into the record. Those will be uploaded onto the county system, so you will be able to access everything that's been presented probably tomorrow at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Hello, everybody. My name's John. I am...
John who?
Hardy.
Thank you, John.
Sorry about that.
Hardy.
I am Ken Clark's son-in-law, and I just married his daughter, Hannah, last year. I know Miss Wingate pretty personally. I played soccer with her sons in high school.
Oh, yes.
Okay. Well,
It's been a long time since I've seen her.
Well, it is Sussex County.
I know, it is Sussex County, right? It's kind of amazing.
Pretty soon, you and I will be cousins before it's over.
Yeah. All right. So I have a degree in environmental science. I am a certified construction reviewer in the state of Delaware, and I've been doing that for the past 3 years as a profession, full-time.
Really?
I work for a third-party company, so we come into every single neighborhood in here. In the entire state, I drive the entire peninsula, basically, and I look for compliance with a stormwater plan.
Right.
There are binders on every single site I go to. I update every single aspect of that, from the narrative, which is a lot of jargon, to site maps, which is a lot of coloring, and I write reports. I take photos of all this stuff. I know how it works. The revised plans I had not seen before for this site. Obviously, they moved the access road, or the emergency road. They lessened the amount of ponds. It used to be 6, I think, and 2 of them outfalled to the east and 4 to the west. Right now it's 4 to the west. That means there's more water going to the western end now because they're making all of these ponds and all of the inlets flow in that direction. And that was to cut down on the flooding closer to Chief Clark's house. So the other side of that is just as bad. It's supposed to be a wetland that is an inlet, meaning the road should have never been put there, essentially. When it rains too much, that whole area fills up to try to reach the bay, not the other way around. Putting a pipe underneath of there isn't going to do anything. We have that on the other side. Doesn't work. I watch an inlet with water gushing out of it into the road. It's not feasible at all. These are the things I wanted to speak on. So, it's in my wheelhouse. The other thing, I know Sussex Conservation District very well. I work closely with them. Currently, they are very understaffed. The guy that covers a lot of the same territory as me sent out 5 reports today by 10:30. He is not doing what he needs to do on these sites. That's where the due diligence comes in. If these people are going to put all this stuff in, we're the ones who have to watch after it. That's obviously not going well so far. And I just have to say personally, if this does go through, I will be walking your site every day with DENRAC on the line, ready to stop it.
All right. You need
All
to speak
right.
to
That's all I have. That's all I have.
All right, sir. All right, thank you.
Cool. Appreciate it. Likewise.
Yes, ma'am, right here in the gray T-shirt.
Oh, let me grab my phone, sorry. That's important. Hi, my name is Jennifer Peasnell. I graduated with a Bachelor of Science in Wildlife Ecology and Marine Studies, so I understand the coastal ecosystems fairly well as well. Though I'm currently a resident of Milton, I grew up and lived much of my life in Long Neck, Delaware, near Oak Orchard. You talk a lot about land rights, land rights, land rights. That is the only thing that has allowed developers to not consider or even downright violate county codes, to wreak havoc on the environment, disturb and destroy native and cultural lands, and impact the lives of human beings who are left devastated by this mess. Well, that, and I guess threatening to sue. Growing up in Long Neck, I have seen a lot of what developers have done over the years and what they have the power to do. I know of a certain developer that has partially built upon the property that belonged to my friend's family. They are part of the Nanacoke tribe. It was their private land. But unlike these developers, they had no protections. They couldn't go up against a multi-million-dollar corporation. The idea of private land rights belongs only to developers, and I'll explain why. In the PLUS review, DENRAC, a state agency, has cited hydrological changes, like those that occur from cutting down one of the last remaining contiguous forests, 43 acres of it, in Oak Orchard, and building a development in its place. This causes a major and increased drainage flooding issues for residents of Oak Orchard, and DENRAC has actually stated that in the PLUS review. You can read that there. DENRAC has stated that there are hydrological shortcomings with these development plans, and that they do not protect natural hydrological processes. You can't change the science. You can't always just go by professionals that are being paid by developers. You must also do your due diligence and listen to other professionals, like those from DENRAC, like those from the Department of Agriculture, who are saying that when you cut down forest and you build a development in its place, you are changing the hydrology of the land, which increases flooding and impacts the communities around it. Section 99-9C calls for consideration of the preservation of natural and historical features. It also calls for the consideration of provision for safe vehicular and pedestrian movement within the site and adjacent ways. Ancestral land rights have been continuously stripped away in Sussex County, and people are will lose portions of their land, let's call it what it is, by eminent domain, not through easements. Landowners will lose portions of their lands for the betterment, quote unquote, of roadways due to this development. I don't believe for a second that people, some who have lived in Oak Orchard for generations, won't lose houses or their lands due to the need to widen roads or to mitigate flooding and drainage issues that this proposed development will cause and exacerbate solely because DENRAC statements were ignored in the PLUS review and nothing listed in 99-9C was actually considered by this developer. Let's face it, a developer's land rights are prioritized higher than the land rights and the safety of residents in Sussex County. Therefore, while you scream land rights, we, the actual people who live here, have far fewer rights. With this development, there is no preservation of natural and historical features, no minimal use of wetlands and floodplains, no minimization of tree, vegetation, and soil removal and grade changes, no integration of the proposed subdivision into existing terrain and surrounding landscape, no prevention of pollution of surface or groundwater, no provision for safe vehicular and pedestrian movement within the site and to adjacent areas. None of these provisions were considered. But, there will be effects on area property values, area roadways, and area waterways, and you can expect that these effects will not be positive. So you have a job to do. This job includes protecting the people that live here from issues of flooding and from hazardous conditions caused by overdevelopment. This job includes considering the provisions listed in Section 99-9C and understanding how this development violates them all 17. But most importantly, your job includes saying no when a developer proposes development plans that are harmful to the community. Stillwater Harbor is a harmful development, and like I said, you have a job to do. Developers do not have a right to go against county codes, ignore state agencies like DENREC and the Department of Agriculture, or inflict harm on the surrounding community. We're talking about people's lives here. You do not have to let them build this development. You can say no, even if they threaten to sue. In fact, that is your job. And I also want to make another point, because this was talked about by the developer, who mentioned that the inland bays have a fair rating. I want to read an article that was published about the CIB most recent report that was released in 2021.
No, we're not reading any articles. So, I appreciate that.
Okay, well then let me summarize it, because this is important.
25 words, you've got 30 seconds. Go ahead.
Okay, so the Center for the Inland Bays, which is cited in the comprehensive plan for you to follow and to listen to to CIB, they graded Delaware Inland Bays with a D rating. And they said that reasons have changed. It's because of recent development near bays that have essentially eliminated forest buffers. Does this sound familiar? There has been modest signs of recovery, but these threats have shifted from agriculture-related pollution to more urban pollutants like stormwater runoff due to development. Thank you.
Perfect. 28 seconds. Good job.